Hello everyone, and welcome to this lesson, an introduction to homeostasis. Many living organisms, such as mammals and plants, as we know, are quite complex. These are organisms that have multiple different organ systems that perform a variety of different metabolic processes. And in addition to that, something like mammals, for example, also carry out muscle contraction and locomotion, meaning they can move around. These kinds of activities and processes are carried out by various different organs, and each of those organs is made up of various different tissues, and within each of those tissues there can be multiple different types of cells. These cells, in order to function correctly, require a specific environment, both inside and outside. So what I mean by inside is the cytosol or cytoplasm of the cell needs to have a specific composition for it to work correctly. And what I mean by outside is that the tissue fluid in which the cells are bathed also needs to have the correct composition. Having this specific internal and external environment helps make sure that the cells, and therefore the whole organism, can continue to function correctly. If these environments deviate too much from this so-called optimum, then the cells won't be able to do their job. And that can have a negative impact on the organism as a whole as well, and cause a lot of problems for them. So, for complex organisms, such as mammals for example, it's extremely important that they're able to maintain their internal environment within very narrow limits around the optimum level. And this process by which they maintain their internal environment at a constant level around the optimum is known as homeostasis. Homeo comes from the Greek word which means similar, and stasis means to stay still. So homeostasis can basically be translated as the process by which we keep things similar to how they were. Basically, maintain the internal environment. Let's take a look at a few examples that you may already be somewhat familiar with, where homeostasis comes into play. One of these is temperature. As you may know, your body temperature is usually maintained around 37 degrees Celsius, regardless of what the external temperature is. Well, how is that? Well, it's because if it gets too hot outside, your body will sweat in order to keep itself cool. And if it gets too cold, you'll start to shiver, which will generate some heat and help you maintain that baseline temperature. These are some basic ways that your body can maintain its temperature. And it's really important that your body maintains its temperature because the body, as you know, makes use of various different enzymes in its different metabolic processes. And enzymes work best at an optimum temperature. If the temperature gets too high, the enzymes might get denatured. And if the temperature is too low, then they might not work as effectively because there'll be less effective collisions between the enzyme and substrate molecules. So, maintaining the body temperature around an optimum helps ensure that enzymes can work efficiently. Another example of something that needs to be controlled by homeostasis is the amount of gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide in your blood. If the levels of these respiratory gases start getting too high or too low, your body can adjust its respiratory rate, meaning the rate at which you inhale and exhale, to compensate for that. This is important to make sure that enough oxygen can be delivered to your tissues and carbon dioxide can be removed. Just like these, some other things that are maintained within a certain range or optimum are things like your heart rate, which is maintained between 60 and 100 beats per minute, and the pH of your blood, which is maintained between 7.35 and 7.45. If your heart rate is too low, then you won't be able to deliver enough oxygen to your tissues to meet their demand. And if it's too fast, then there won't be enough time between beats or between contractions for the ventricles to fill with blood properly. So it's very important to maintain a resting heart rate within this normal range. As for the pH, similar to how it was with temperature, it's because of the enzymes. Remember, enzymes are also sensitive to changes in pH. So you want to keep your pH tightly regulated so that enzymes can work properly. Yet another thing that's tightly regulated is going to be the blood pressure. So the pressure that is maintained in your vessels. If there's too little pressure, then organs won't be perfused with blood well and oxygen delivery will be compromised. And if there's too high of a pressure, then fluid may leak out and lead to there being too much tissue fluid. So the blood pressure also needs to be maintained at a proper level. Then you also have to maintain the concentrations of different ions. You see, different ions have different concentrations in different places, such as the blood or the tissue fluid. And in a lot of places, these ion concentrations contribute to concentration gradients, which are very important for the normal functioning of various different types of cells and systems. So, these concentrations need to be maintained as well. All of these are examples of homeostasis, where internal environments are maintained at a certain optimum level. However, the types of homeostasis that you specifically need to know in detail for your exam are going to be osmoregulation and glucose control for mammals, and the regulation of stomatal opening in plants. Osmoregulation, very basically, is the control of water potential of different body fluids, such as, for example, the water potential of the cytosol inside the cells, the water potential of the tissue fluids surrounding the cells, and of the blood plasma. This control of the water potential of different body fluids is important because if the water potentials get messed up, then water will start to move by osmosis into and out of places that it's not supposed to. For example, if the water potential around a particular cell is too low, then that can cause the cell to lose water because water will move out of the cell by osmosis, and that can lead to the cell shriveling up and dying. And conversely, if the water potential around the cell is too high, water could move into the cell by osmosis, and if too much water moves in, the cell could swell up and even burst. So, in order for the cells to function normally, they must be kept in an environment where the water potential is controlled, for example, in an isotonic solution. And this control of water potential of different body fluids is osmoregulation. The other thing that we're going to learn about for mammals is going to be the control of blood glucose levels. If there's not enough glucose available, then cells won't be able to use it for respiration. If you remember, glucose is a preferred respiratory substrate. And conversely, if there's too much glucose, then it will lower the water potential. And it can even draw water out of cells by osmosis, because if the water potential outside the cell gets lower, then water will leave the cell by osmosis. So again, it's important to maintain the concentration of blood glucose within a certain normal range. Besides these, you'll also learn about the control of stomatal opening in plants. This is going to be important to control the amount of gas exchange that's taking place and to prevent excessive water loss by transpiration. We'll talk about the details of each of these in separate lessons, but regardless of the example, any kind of homeostasis will require various different systems working together in order to maintain a near constant internal environment. It's really important that organisms are able to do this because they need to have the constant internal environment, and external environments could change.
Quick pause. If you're finding value in this explanation, there's so much more to discover at Alt Academy, where we break down every A-level concept with the same clarity. Now back to the video lesson.
For example, some days it could be really hot, while other days it might be a little colder. Some days might be really humid, while other days might be dry. So regardless of changing external environments and circumstances, the internal environment needs to be maintained so that the organism can continue to function normally. This is also why certain species can survive in quite extreme climates. For example, these camels here in the desert, or this polar bear in an icy environment. How can they do that? It's because they're able to regulate their internal body temperatures, regardless of the rather extreme external environment. Now, for each of these different examples that we've talked about, the specific mechanism of how it is maintained is going to be different for each of them. However, the basic principle behind it is going to be the same. Whenever there is some sort of change in the normal internal environment, the mechanisms of homeostasis will come into action to correct it. And even though temperature regulation isn't really part of your exam in any sort of detail, let's use it as an example so you can understand this basic concept. Our normal internal body temperature is set at around 37 degrees Celsius. Now, let's say the temperature in the environment outside is around 40 degrees Celsius. What's going to happen? Our body is going to start heating up, right? That heat is going to be absorbed by our body and our internal temperature will start to rise. This change in the external or even internal environment for that matter is called a stimulus, and this is what can trigger homeostasis. Now, in order for homeostasis to occur, this stimulus must be detected by our bodies, and the part of our body that's going to detect this stimulus can be called a receptor. You can think of this as kind of like a sensor in our body that will detect these changes, and the more sensitive these receptors are, the more tightly they will control the internal environment. In our body, these receptors are usually going to be specialized cells with specific membrane proteins that can detect these types of changes. And usually they're going to be found in specific areas of either the brain or other specialized organs, such as the pancreas. In the case of temperature, these receptors are located in a part of the brain that is called the hypothalamus. And these thermoreceptors can constantly monitor our body temperature and detect when it rises or drops below the normal. Once this stimulus has been detected by the receptors, this information can then be sent to a control center or a coordination system. Here, it can then be compared to the normal baseline or optimum value. The goal of this control center is going to be to reverse whatever changes have occurred and return it back to the baseline. That is homeostasis. In order to do that, based on whatever input or stimulus it received, it is going to create an output. And that's why it's called a coordination system, because this is where you coordinate the input with the output. Once the stimulus has been detected by the receptor, it's then going to be processed here, and a relevant response or output is going to be generated. And that output is going to come into play by means of an effector. The effector is going to be the part of the body, such as a muscle or a gland, that will act in order to bring whatever factor has changed back to the baseline. Let's take a look at how that would work for our example where the external temperature is too high and so the body temperature is starting to rise. In this case, this rise in temperature is going to be our stimulus, and it's going to be detected by receptors in the hypothalamus of the brain. The brain can then assess that temperature change and compare it to the baseline, and can see that, okay, the temperature is rising above what is normal. When this happens, it will then coordinate a response, the goal of which will be to lower the temperature back to the normal range, back to the baseline of 37 degrees Celsius. This processing is going to happen in the control center. The instructions for that response or output will then be sent to an effector. In this case, let's say a sweat gland. The effector will then carry out that response. For example, the sweat glands will increase the amount of sweat they produce. As the water in that extra sweat starts to evaporate from your skin, it takes a lot of heat energy with it, and that cools your body down, helping to return the temperature towards the baseline. So, as you can see, this response or output basically works to bring about the opposite effect to what the input or stimulus was doing. So if the stimulus was a rise in temperature, then the output will be something that brings the temperature down again. Conversely, if the stimulus would have been different, for example, a drop in temperature, then the output would have been something that brought the temperature up again, such as shivering, for example. This kind of mechanism where if something increases, the body responds by trying to bring it down again, and if it decreases, it responds by trying to bring it up again, thereby keeping it fluctuating around a very narrow set point or narrow range, is called a negative feedback mechanism. This system is going to be the main way that our body maintains homeostasis, negative feedback. If something increases, it will have a response that will make it decrease again. And if something decreases, it will have a response that will make it increase again, keeping the value around a normal baseline. There is also another type of feedback that exists, which is called positive feedback, which is where if there is a change in a particular direction, the body responds by furthering that change in that direction. So for example, positive feedback would be if a factor increases, the body responds with something that would further increase it. This type of mechanism, of course, would not be considered an example of homeostasis, because in this situation, we're not trying to keep things the same. In fact, we're trying to enhance whatever change is occurring. So in homeostasis, the mechanism that is used is negative feedback. In either case, though, what's happening here is that a receptor will detect a stimulus, and then it will pass that information to the coordination system, which will then pass the information for a response to the effector. And this information can be passed either through electrical signals or through chemical signals. If the information is being passed electrically, this will be through electrical impulses through the nerves, and will usually involve the brain and the spinal cord to kind of coordinate this. And usually muscles will be your effectors. On the other hand, if it's being passed chemically, it will be passed through hormones, which are released by endocrine organs into the blood, through which they will travel to reach their target organs in order to bring about the desired effect. So, the information can either be passed using the nervous system or using the endocrine system. And even though there are some differences in the details of how these two systems work, ultimately both of them will work to regulate the internal environment of the organism and maintain homeostasis. So, as a quick recap, homeostasis is going to be the mechanism by which the body maintains its internal environment. Any change in the external or internal environment that can cause a change in the organism's internal environment would be considered a stimulus, and this will be detected by receptors. The receptors will then send that information to the coordination system, where it will be processed and compared to the baseline. From there, a response or output will be generated, which will be carried out by effectors. The information will be sent to the effectors using either the nervous system, the endocrine system, or a combination of both, and the effectors will act to correct the change that occurred. This kind of mechanism, where if a factor increases, the body does something to decrease it again, and if it decreases, the body does something to increase it again, is called a negative feedback loop or negative feedback response, and this is the mechanism that is used for homeostasis. For your exam, the examples of homeostasis that you're going to need to know the details for are going to be osmoregulation and glucose control in mammals, and the regulation of stomatal opening in plants, and we will cover these in detail in separate lessons. For now though, that's it for this intro. I hope you found it useful, and I'll see you next time.
Hey there! If you found this A-level biology lesson helpful, why don't you head over to altacademy.org and sign up for our full A-level biology course. In addition to biology, you could sign up for physics, chemistry, math, or 4 other A-level subjects. Thousands of students have already taken the leap. What are you waiting for? See you there.